So what we thought we'd come on and talk about was, how do we go beyond our limits, or how do we cross our limits? So the first, what did I write? So I wrote a couple of questions. Yeah, so what I focused on, or at least inviting us to consider, is what stops us going beyond kind of the limits, the familiar, we could call it the familiar. And why do we think that it's difficult for people, Caroline? So I've just kind of posed those questions. So for me, what it looks like is, and those of you listening, feel free to add anything or think with us. But so, for example, I think we all know where in our lives we're at point A and we want to get to point B, whatever point B is. It might be your dream house or even your dream holiday or profession. So often it's familiar as a human being that this is the creative, or the creative flow of life, that we're constantly, in my view, in my own experience, it's human nature to want to grow, to expand into things and want to have things. You know, I think this is even a subject for another day, maybe, but the subject of the things we want and desire. So I think that's what I was looking at first. And I think it might be useful if together, Caroline, we look at maybe some tips of how people can cross that limit, what feels like the limit, and maybe why it can be difficult.
I think the first and most important like boundary or obstacle is our mind, because we label things almost unconsciously as impossible. And I'll give you like a really quick example of that. So like, I used to work at a gym and I used to say, yeah, some of my goals are like handstands and splits. And in those conversations, sometimes people would immediately almost like switch off or write it off, because in their head, they'd defined those things for themselves as impossible. So my biggest tip, like to start to step towards beyond our limits, is redefine impossible for you. You don't need to kind of shut that down before you've even started, and like open it back up. And yes, you might be years away from that goal, but if you don't actually think it's possible to begin with, then it's never going to happen.
Yeah, great. And following on from what you've just said, I think one tip that I'd give to myself and all of us is that, you know, if I take an example, a very real example of something that became very familiar to me, was working in a private practice and creating strategy and designing sessions for my clients, and also delivering those sessions. But I, at one point, was completely new to all of that. But with time, and here's what I've learned, that often when we've got a goal, we need to cross our limits and learn and maybe make mistakes and whatever else is going to happen in that unknown. It's just to focus on one step, like one action at a time. And you know what? Even so, I feel like I'm in that place again. Like I'm not like some of us. I'm not totally familiar with the digital world. It's quite new to me. And the way that I'm crossing my limit and crossing, like you were saying, Caroline, maybe those less useful thoughts will pop into my head to try and stop me and maybe take me back to what I was doing before, are just focusing on one thing at a time, one step that will take you closer, rather than what happens often for us is we get overwhelmed. We get completely overwhelmed and we try to want everything to be perfect, and it's not useful. It's not useful for us. So that would be my big tip, and I'm in it right now. I'm really in it right now.
I literally just like, I've literally written one of the same things there, Rachel. And that I think, like, beyond our limits, some of those goals or ideas that we have, they can feel a bit like, you know, stepping out of the aeroplane. We want them to be grand, great big things, change that we're going to do. Where actually, let's scale the grand down to the small. And so the thing that I've written down is like, the small changes lead to the remarkable results. And so you're right, figuring out your next 1 step or maximum next 5 steps. That's all you need to concern yourself with now. So like, if beyond your limits is jumping out of an aeroplane, don't think about that. That's the end goal. Put your like kit on first. That's the first step towards that. And you only need to worry about learning how to do that bit and get that bit right to begin with. And then kind of if you take care of the small changes, the small steps, the bigger picture takes care of itself. So, you know, you want to learn to handstand, you get upside down each day, you just jump up. You want to jump out of the plane, you want to like leave your 9 to 5. Then you make the small steps that suddenly mean the impossible becomes the possible without having to like stress and overwhelm. Like, oh my God, how am I going to create this massive change? It's just trusting that those little small changes, what's the next step in front of you? So it's really funny that we've written pretty much the same thing down there.
Yeah, yeah. And those of you joining, let me just pin the subject. Hey, Jen, my cousin's just come in. I'm just pinning the subject for today, which is how do we go beyond our limits? So a big one for me, Caroline, I don't know if you share this one, is I honestly, if I look back on my progress and this subject of, you know, going from A to B, whatever that A to B is, in our life of the things we want, I couldn't have done it without having teachers and mentors. Because going back to my question, why is it so difficult for us? I sense and I believe it's more difficult if we are doing it alone, because it's human nature in a way to keep ourselves in safety. Whatever our minds might tell us is, you know, is the danger of stepping out and taking this action that's new or trying this. And what tends to happen when you've got a teacher or a mentor, at least I know for myself, is they will really support you in going into your fears or those places where they're difficult to go ourselves, because they can see you, they can see your blind spots. And that's been one of the most useful for me, like how investing, and it is investing in myself, having a teacher and a mentor that in a way, you know, it's like jumping out of the plane, isn't it, in a tandem with, yeah, that you've got someone to take you on the journey into, and those moments when we doubt and we don't believe in ourselves, you've got somebody who can, you know, give you a helping hand and join you in the journey. So that would be another tip from my own personal journey.
And leading into that as well, linking into that, I think the teacher or the mentor, the coach, quite often they've either got the skills or learning, or they've physically done the experience that shows you, therefore, it's possible for you too. You know, the woman that's running the successful business as the CEO, that shows that it is possible for you. And I think a coach definitely like can show you the next steps, give you that perspective, but also almost like shows you into the future, helps you step into that future quicker. Yeah. My next one was that it kind of links into the small changes idea. And I think when we go beyond our limits, we need to look at our time scale. Because sometimes we're like, right, I'm going to learn to handstand. I'm going to quit my 9 to 5 next month. And like, that's awesome because you're fired up. You've got that momentum. But actually, I think we overestimate what we can do in like a day, a week, a month. But we completely underestimate what we can do in like 1 to 5 years. So I think keeping an idea of the time scale is really, really important, and thinking, actually, can I scale down what I'm going to do this week, but look forwards into a year's time and kind of trust that, you know, once I've got all of that experience and those small steps, that actually I'm going to have stepped further and gone farther and learned more than I ever thought I could. So I think perspective around the time scale is really important for me for looking beyond our limits.
Yeah. Yeah, and my final one, actually, Caroline, is actually linked to that. So what I wrote down when I thought about, how do we cross our limits? How do we get closer to the things we want? 2, which might sound really simple, but I know I have to remind myself often, are to get really focused. So know what it is you want, and then make a plan. Make a plan of how are you going to get it, and like you're saying, like have some kind of time frame, because that description and that clarity is really powerful in terms of, yes, us going beyond our limits, but what is it that we want? You know, what is it that we're wanting? So I kind of put that on the end, to have a plan and focus.
Well, I'm all over that. The name of my business is not by coincidence. Life is better with a plan, and that plan can be creative, flexible, joyful. It doesn't need to be routine and depressing. I think as well, there's more freedom with a plan, because you then almost have the outcome is you almost don't have to think about it. Like if you think about the Olympian athlete, and they have all these rituals, these little steps. So they get out of bed and they think of this and they feel the body that. And each of those little steps in itself isn't important. But you link them all together. It creates this freedom, this flow that means the outcome is just the extension of all of those small steps. And that's how I like to think about plans and moving beyond our limits, because actually the outcome is just the sum of all of those little efforts. It's not a grand effort in itself.
Yeah.
And I had one final one as well, in that I think a lot of us, when we get to be adults, we kind of start to box in who we are and what we think our identity is. And so if someone asks us who we are, say at a dinner party, we tend to then start to fall into things like, I am a teacher, I like snowboarding, I like reading, or whatever it is. And I think we kind of lose perspective sometimes that actually your current opinion, set of beliefs and identity, they're not actually fact or fixed. And I think quite often we believe that they are, and that puts limits on us. So it's kind of links full circle to me saying redefine impossible for yourself. And when you start to think that, right, well, maybe I can look beyond the reality, the belief that I am a teacher, then it means that you can learn and step into something different. But if you don't question that belief to begin with, then, you know, again, nothing's going to change. So I think being really, really open to learning, like listen to all of the different perspectives, even if you don't agree with 90% of them, you're then in a stronger, more informed place of what you believe in and what you want to do, compared to if you're like, no, I'm going to believe this and I'm only going to do this. Yeah, open mind.
Yeah, great. So let us know, those of you on the chat with us, has that been useful? Is there anything else you would like to add to this subject? And it's a pretty broad subject, actually. We've mentioned a few things, but there's lots more to talk about with this subject of crossing our limits and going beyond our limits.
So we close, Rachel. So can you give me one example where you've gone beyond your limit? Like, what does this look like in your life for you?
So where have I gone beyond my limits? Where do I feel? I would say, and it's an interesting question, because when we ask that question, Caroline, do you think it's useful to interpret it as in something that you didn't imagine you would achieve and you achieved it? Or
potentially.
Yeah, so there's going to be a few things, but let me think. I would say the like achieving my diploma as a Grimberg method practitioner, which was honestly like getting a black belt in martial arts. And I remember it in my mind actually just the other day. I remember I was in my first few months of study, and unfortunately I was in a personal process, and I had a teacher who was in the method and a very good friend of mine. And I remember nearly quitting in that first year, because it just felt a lot alongside doing a job. It felt as if it was, my mind told me it was going to be too much. And so to give you a very real example, I had some personal development sessions, some support with her as a mentor, where she showed me that that was just my mind. That was my my mind telling me this is too much, you're not going to be able to do this, quit now. And that might resonate with some of you, where we can give up quickly and and not trust ourselves. So it really kept me going. And yes, it was intense, and it did demand more of me than I've ever given. I had to take my clients to Switzerland and Germany just for a supervision. I mean, it was pretty crazy. But you know, I got there, and I got my diploma at the end of 4 years. So that really crossed my limits in terms of owning something and committing to something with every part of my being, not giving up. Yeah, so I'd say that comes to mind.
It really links into one of our previous points, isn't it? That at some point your mind told you that wasn't possible. And actually that, as you say, was a lie that your mind was telling yourself. So when you redefine that and think it is possible, like humans are capable of so much more than we think. And I think that's a perfect example, isn't it? Because you were ready to quit, you were ready to give up. Yeah. I've got as you say, quite a lot. But to bring it sort of into the almost like the fitness world, I guess. My example of going beyond my limits is running a marathon. And I'd also contrast it to two different ways. So like my husband, when he ran a marathon, didn't necessarily consistently put in the training, but on the day came this superhuman effort. And that was his way of going beyond his limit. Like that extra reserve of strength and mental strength to push through something that he wasn't particularly physically capable of doing at that intensity at that time. And that's one example of him going beyond his limit. But my limit in that was that I didn't think I could do a marathon. My approach was to train consistently and utterly committed to putting in the miles day in, day out for months on end. And actually, therefore, the outcome was far, far better than I even imagined in my mind in terms of the experience and the time, because the outcome was just an extension of all of that consistent small effort that I'd put in over time. So two like really different approaches and examples there of how we go beyond our limits.
Hi, I'm Caroline, and welcome to this flow that's going to go beyond our limits. Now, before we go any further, remember you are the expert in your own body. So your limits are different from mine, and listen to what feels right in your body. Okay, so you'll need today a couple of blocks if you have them. If not, a yoga mat, bit of space, and yourself. We're going to start seated. Now set yourself up in whatever comfortable seat works for you. So we might start with hips on heels. You might start in a cross-legged position. You might take some blocks and sit on them as well. Okay, so we're going to bring the hands onto the lap. We're going to give the shoulders a little wiggle as we just find the comfortable, relaxed position down our back. And flutter the eyelids closed. Breathe in through the nose and grow tall. And soft sigh out of the mouth. And breathe in. Gentle sigh out the mouth. And breathe in. And gentle sigh out. And then let your breath come in and out through the nose, if that's available to you. And use just these few moments to arrive on your mat. Feel your body in space. Notice the natural rhythm of your breath. And take one more breath in and out. And then blinking the eyelids open. As you next breathe in, circle the arms up towards the sky, fingertips reaching up. Palms face each other, maybe take a look up if that's comfortable on your neck. And breathe out, draw the hands through to heart center. 2 more like that. Breathe in, arms circle to the sky. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, hands to heart center. Breathe in to interlace the fingers, and then exhale, press the palms away from you as you round your spine and tuck your chin in. Your breath in now extends your heart forwards, the palms to the sky. And exhale, press the palms away from you, round through the spine, front body to back body. Inhaling, palms to the sky. Exhale, ripple through the spine, feel the chin and the tailbone tuck underneath. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, press and round. Inhaling, arms to the sky, unwrap the revel of your hands, and exhale, draw your right arm behind, underneath your left arm. And you can either catch hold of opposite shoulders here, or you might find a bind, so you wrap the hands once, reaching together the backs of the hands. You might find a second wrap, palms of the hands together, eagle arms. And from here, breathe in, send the fingertips to the sky. Exhale, drawing the elbows back down. So we're going to start to floss the shoulders, moving the fingertips up and down. And if you have catching hold of opposite elbows, then send the elbows high and low. And here, focusing on the space in between the shoulder blades. And the next time you breathe in, unravel the arms, reach them up towards the sky. And exhale, bring the hands back through to heart center. We're going to take that again on the second side. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale to heart center. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, hands to heart center. Inhale to interlace the fingers the other weird way round. And exhale, press the palms away from you. Round in your chin and your tailbone. Breathe in, palms to the sky. Breathe out, round through the spine. Press the palms away. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, curl in and round. Inhale, arms to the sky. Exhale, last one, press the palms away from you. Inhale, palms lift up, separate the fingertips, exhaling to draw the arms down and round, the left arm crossing underneath. And again, you can catch hold of opposite elbows. You can find the one wrap or the double wrap. And as you breathe in, send your fingertips to the sky or elbows to the sky, and then exhale, draw them back down. So again, starting to floss through the shoulders, creating space in between the shoulder blades. Moving with your breath. And the next time you breathe in, unwrap, send your fingertips to the sky, and then exhale, gather everything in to heart center. From here, walk your hands forwards through to an all fours position. And adjust so that your hands are beneath your shoulders, your knees are underneath your hips. And let's begin to warm up into the wrists a little more. So inhaling, circle forwards, shoulders a little over the wrists if available to you, and exhaling, circling back. And you might keep this quite small to begin with. Moving with your breath. And then send those in the other direction. Noticing where feels okay, where might feel a bit sticky or jammy in the wrists. Keeping it comfortable. And then pausing through center, walk the hands back in to come back to a kneeling position. Now, if you have some blocks, take them either side of your knees so that the tops of the blocks sit in line with the knees. Then you're going to draw your fingertips down onto the blocks. so that the fingertips are just behind the knees. From here we're going to do some Lalasana prep, which warms up our core. So from here, hands on blocks or to the floor. The blocks will just give you a bit more height, a bit more room. Take a breath in. And then as you exhale, cat the back. So create space in between the shoulder blades like we were doing, drawing front body to back body, tucking the chin. And then inhale, release. Let's do that again. Exhale. Press the ground away, round to the spine, separate the shoulder blades. And inhale, release. And just sit back, ease off the wrists, take the hands, interlace them, and draw a few figure of eights. We're going to add on. And send those figure of eights in both directions. And then bring your hands back down, setting them onto the blocks of the ground just underneath your legs. So from here, this time as you inhale, press the ground away. Cat through the back. As you exhale, draw your knees high into the chest. Think the ankles stay low. Take slow breaths. Knees high, hips low. Breath in. And then exhale, slides back down. Oh, tough, isn't it? Again, release the hands, interlace the fingers the other way around, and send some figures of eights into the wrist, just easing that off. We're going to do one more. Okay, bring your hands back down onto the ground or onto your blocks, just behind the wrists. Breathe in, cat the back. Exhale, lift the knees, knees high, hips low. And holds, press, and breathe. Breath in, and exhale, and come back down. And this time you might just give the wrist a quick shake, like you're shaking off some water. Breathe in, and exhale, release. Bring your hands back in front of you and step it back, downward facing dog. And with your downward facing dog, you might find a little bit of movement to begin with, so bending and straightening into the legs. Slow breaths in and out through the nose, moving whichever way feels good for your body. And then starting to find some stillness. We haven't warmed up much into the hamstrings, so I encourage you to keep a bent knee, heels lifted, so that your hips stay high and there's length through the spine. Press the ground away, spin your biceps forwards, triceps back. And downward dog is the first inversion in yoga. Slow breaths as you gaze towards the big toes. I'm going to take 5 more slow breaths here. Keep pressing the ground away, chest to thighs. And one more breath. As you exhale, let the knees sink together or apart onto your mat. Rock your hips back and find a child's pose. After that strength, that effort, find some stillness and softness. One more breath in and out. And we're going to do that again. So as you inhale, rock yourself forwards, tuck the toes, and as you exhale, downward facing dog. And we're going to take 10 slow breaths here this time. Remembering to prioritize the length through the spine so knees can be bent, heels lifted. Press the ground away. Spin biceps towards triceps back as though you're trying to wrap your armpits underneath you. Keep breathing. We've got 3 more slow breaths. One more. And then as you next exhale, let your knees sink together or apart, hips rock back, take a child's pose. If it feels nicer, you might walk the hands back towards the back of the mat. Take whatever version of child's pose eases you, allows you to find some softness. Slow the breath down, feel the body heavy and soft. From here, if you've taken your hands behind you, walk them back out. We're going to briefly lift a downward facing dog. So inhale, rock yourself forwards, tuck the toes, and exhale, downward facing dog. And from here, we're going to find a wide-legged fold. So start to walk your hands back towards your feet. Knees can bend if needed, so that you end up in a fold at the back of your mats. From here, heel toe the feet nice and wide. So probably wider or a little wider than your mats, so that you have the space to bring your hands down directly underneath your shoulders. And if you can't quite reach, that's fine. Bring in some blocks so that you're a little bit higher, but you want it so that your palm can rest down on something. You might adjust, so like feet might be narrower, or they might be further apart in order to get your hands down directly underneath your shoulders. Okay, from here, we're going to experiment with transferring the weight into the hands. So as you inhale, first of all, rock back, sending the weight into the heels, lifting the toes. And then as you exhale, rock forwards, lift the heels, transfer the weight into the hands, but also cat the back. So press the ground away, separate the shoulder blades as you rock forwards. And then inhale, rock back, transfer the weight out of the hands, the toes lift. Exhale, rock forwards, weight into the balls of the feet. Heels lift, press through the hands, cat the back. Let's take those a few more times. So inhale, rocks back, toes lift. Exhale, heels lift, rock forwards as you press the ground away. Inhale, rock back, toes lift. Last one. Exhale, transfer the weight forwards, cat the back, press the ground away, and then release back through center. And from here, walk your feet back in. Hands can lift, knees can bend if needed, and take your feet about a hip distance apart. Knees nice and soft. Cushion yourself down, your chest can rest on your thighs, and find a ragdoll. So catching hold of opposite elbows, you might find a sway, or you might stay still. Take a big breath in through the nose, and a breath out of the mouth. And then release hold of opposite elbows, bend the knees, and bring yourself back down to the mat. So for here, you have the option to start to take some bunny hops. So full transfer of weight into the hands. You do have the option, of course, to not at all leave the ground. So I'll start with that option for you. So you're going to start at the back of the mat. And we're going to come into a much shorter downward facing dog. So we'll walk the hands out. So I suggest you just watch this bit and then we'll do it together. So a slightly shorter downward facing dog. From here, chest is back towards the thighs. Lift the heels up, bend the knees and look to the hands. Now your first option is to transfer the weight into the hands. So you transfer forwards, and then maybe you lift a leg. Or you take a little bunny hop. Now the goal isn't to fly yourself into the air and find some balance. The goal is to try and get your heels to your bum. Okay, so it's like you're trying to kick your bum with your heels. So in a shorter downward facing dog, look in between the hands, hop up, heels to bum. Hop up, heels to bum. and hop up, heels to bum. Okay, so we're going to do that together, and you can have a go with me now. So bring your hands down about shoulder width apart, step yourself into a shorter downward facing dog. Lift your heels, bend your knees, look to your hands. Take a breath in. Exhale, heels to bum. Landing softly, bending the knees, and again, reset up, bend the knees, lift the heels, gaze to the hands. Take a breath in. Exhale, heels to bum. And last one, lift up the heels, bend the knees, and look to the hands. Take a breath in. And exhale, heels to bum. And then as you land next, if you want to have another go, then pause the video and have a few more hops. But when you're ready to join me and release, stretch yourself out in a child's pose. Starting to slow things down. Steady the breath. One more breath in and out. And then walk the hands back in towards the legs and shift the legs out in front of you. And you'll probably want to wiggle your way forwards onto the mat so that you've got some room to roll down. And taking hold of behind the legs, gently ease your way onto your back. And as you come onto your back, then walk your feet in to about hip distance. What we did there with the transfer of weight into the hands, the prep for inversions, there was a lot of push. So we're going to just open out the heart, the front of the body. So from this position here, as you inhale, press your lower back down onto the mat. And then as you exhale, lift the hips in a glute bridge. Extend the knees away from you. Keep your gaze up towards the sky. Magnetize the inner thighs together using the whole strength of your back body here. Your exhale slowly rolls down the spine. Draw your knees into your chest. Stretch your right leg away from you. And then exhale to send the left leg across the body into a twist. And gaze left, lay out the left arm. Inhaling, come back through center. Gather the knees in. Stretch the left leg out long. Send your right knee across the body in a supine twist. Laying out your right arm, maybe gaze to the right. Inhaling back through center. From here, send your feet out long. Prepare for final relaxation, Shavasana. Separate the arms from the body, turn the palms up. And when you're in position, take a long breath in through the nose. And an exhale out of the mouth. Eyes closed, releasing anything that happened or didn't happen in your practice. And stay here as long as you like, letting that movement integrate into your body. Thank you for practicing with me.